Hey kids, well it's me again, the abominable Dr. Knickknack or whatever, I don't know. How's it going? I'm going to talk about a little movie. Now, of course, we are out of the spooky season, but I've ever let that stop me. We are going to look at a little horror movie tonight. We are going to look at a slasher. And this is a little tidbit from 19 when was it made? 1977, called Alice Sweet Alice, aka Communion. Now this was directed by Alfred Soule and was co-written by him. And this is an interesting little flick. I want to say a few words to you before we go into this about watching movies under the influence, because that's how I first saw this. Little, yeah. Now, true disclosure, yeah, I've been sober for 3 years. I have been pretty much drug free for the last 2.5 decades at this point. Uh, and I don't know, but I've always been, I'm one of those sober people who will. I'm never gonna push my life onto yours. I'm never gonna sit there and say, "Oh, put down that joint, put down that beer, or whatever it is you're doing." It's your own body, it's your own business, and I'm kind of okay with that. Uh, you gotta go on your own path, and we don't all have the same needs. But with this film, I don't know. This was at the time. It was right around the time my roommate and I were watching a lot of movies. We're just grabbing a lot of stuff and watching it, and we're usually watching it pretty wrecked on the weekends. And so this one we grabbed. There was this one. That was a weird night, man. We were wrecked. I mean, watching movies under the influence, it's kind of like it's the difference between, I don't know, and it depends. Depending on what you're on, it could be the difference between seeing Joe's Apartment and thinking it's a comic masterpiece, or seeing Joe's Apartment and wanting to claw your face off. And some people feel that way about it sober. But anyway, neither here nor there. Well, it's kind of neither here nor there, but it can definitely color anything that you watch, depending how wrecked you are. And we were wrecked that night. The one thing I remember was we had kind of social things going on at the time, but we were kind of watching this movie. But then I think at certain points we were getting up and doing other stuff, and then I think at one point movies weren't necessarily being watched, but I was sitting in the living room seeing bits and pieces on cable of Hotel New Hampshire, which is a weird enough movie on its own. I mean, just when you're sitting there watching, and uh, Nastasia Kinski running around in a bear suit, and like is it Bo or Jeff Bridges? I think it's Jeff. Sitting there saying, sitting there as the patriarch of this family-run hotel business, and saying every good hotel needs a bear, referencing Nastasia Kinski. And then I don't know, some super genius little girl who is celebrated but then becomes kind of a washed up has been while she's still a little kid, kind of in a very poetic, kind of picturesque scene, like walking off a building and doing herself in. Which, man, I'll tell you what. Uh, I don't know if I ever want to see that movie in its entirety or ever want to see that movie sober, but I saw enough of it and I saw enough weird stuff jump out at me to where it's like, yeah, okay, I think I'm good. And that was kind of messed up, but that ain't what this is about. Okay, so Alice, Sweet Alice, boy. Okay, so I'm just going to set it up for you. Okay, so this movie stars Paula Shepherd as the titular Alice. And there is, which was I think largely used as a selling point, especially later on when the video market happened, to get people to want to rent it or buy it or pick it up. And so a slasher movie with that stars a very young Brooke Shields at the beginning of her career, and don't care one way or another, but it's kind of like, Brooke Shields is in it. Well, maybe it's good. So we throw this thing in. We've never heard of it. We don't really know what to expect. And goddamn, okay, whatever we were on at the time probably helped or hurt, however you want to look at it. But yeah, we were so wrecked when we watched this. We couldn't really wrap our heads around the plot all that well, and we knew that Brooke Shields was in there somewhere. We recognized her. Oh yeah, that's a little Brooke Shields. We were so wrecked we didn't even get that she dies 10 minutes into the movie. We were still going, yeah, where's the Brooke Shields character? Yeah, she died at the beginning of the movie, guys. You know, just say no. But this movie concerns the titular Alice, who is a young girl, but not the youngest girl, and she's running around. She and her family is just heavily. It takes place, I think, in the early '60s or 1950s, but she's very ensconced in the Catholic Church in Paterson, New Jersey, and there's a hang up going there. Her parents are divorced, and she has a younger sister played by Brooke Shields, and they have kind of a sibling rivalry going on. Particularly on the point when it comes to the church and the way the church sees her and the way the family sees her, because she was born out of wedlock. And then as Brooke Shields as the character was the legitimate birth. And so Brooke Shields is accepted in the church and gets to do the communion and all that. Alice doesn't. And, how tragic to have religion shit on your life that young. Anyway, but that's kind of what this movie is about. And without blowing too many doors off, okay, so, I've pretty much spoiled it already. So, yeah, Brooke Shields gets killed 10 minutes into this. And there's a whole mysterious thing running around it where she's kind of looked down on, I think, within the extended family, with maybe in the neighborhood, very much within the church. And so suspicion is cast upon her, and she's kind of a weird little girl, and she's going through, divorce issues and whatnot. Yeah, it's gonna mess with your head. But the entire slasher mystery, and there's not a lot of kills. Sorry all you gore hounds. There's not a lot of kills. There's a lot of atmosphere. It's heavy. I mean, I felt like I was watching something that was shot around my childhood, or maybe about that era of America, that era, the early '60s, and in the Catholic Church. I grew up Catholic, but so it's just like looking at this and looking at all the baggage being presented. I don't know if Alfred Soul was also a guy who grew up Catholic, but it wouldn't surprise me. Um, yeah, and so the whole thing is Alice committing these murders and doing these random attacks, or is it someone else? And so there's that whole thing, and there's a whole kind of confusing bait and switch going on. And then there's this one guy who was a real interesting character. I guess he was kind of an oddball street performer who kind of went in and got this role, just extremely obese, creepy. I was a neighbor or a landlord. I think he's a landlord, and he continually leches on Alice and plays all these weird games with her, and you just kind of have this mentality. I don't know. I almost feel like a lot of psychological research went into creating a character like this, because a lot of the MOs of people like this, I look at it and I thought, wow, that's messed up. But I feel like there's a lot of that kind of built into this. So Alfred Soul and or the co-producer or the co-writer Rosemary Ritvo, a lot of writing, a lot of very intelligent, very disturbing writing going into this, and yeah, the whole thing. I had the whole weird whammy this hit me with, and it's one of those things where I had to go back and watch it a few times, like, wow. And I think later on, I was just kind of walking around for a long time after this. And it's funny because I have mentioned in past reviews my friend Brian Shane, aka YouTube Smurdley, was telling me, was kind of always needling me in our correspondence and talking about your beloved Catholic Church, because I grew up Catholic. Full disclosure, I'm not religious. I'm not a religious person particularly. But it was funny because after that, I kind of, just walking around after that and just kind of thinking about it, thinking about everything that happens in that, and the way it impacts certain characters in this movie. I was like, wow, the religion I grew up in really is that bad. And the truth is, Catholicism, as I grew up with it, was probably not as rigid. Yeah, probably not quite as hardcore Orthodox as the church in Alice, Sweet Alice. I think that movie is meant to take place earlier, but as of Vatican II, it started loosening up, and there were different things about it kind of loosening up, and feels like it was maybe a little more friendly toward human beings. But yeah, it bent my brain when I was under the influence, and it bent my brain after I got sober. But yeah, this is a great flick. I think this is possibly one of the best slasher movies ever made, and I would say, I don't know, just particularly Paula Shepherd. Jesus Christ, this girl had a very small filmography. She did this, and I tell you a little later on, she did Liquid Sky, and she's great in both movies. She's very different in both movies. And there were two very different movies, but they're also both very well worth seeing. Anyway, yeah, this is a big one to put a pin in, folks. I am a huge fan of this flick, and I think y'all should check it out.